The gospel reading for today is from Luke 17. Actually, just a couple of verses rather than 5 through 10. It'll be 5 and 6, or maybe a little heavy. But anyway, it's on page 80 of the New Testament section of the Bible. The apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." The Lord replied, "If you had had faith the size of mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it would obey you." And the Lord blessed this reading of the gospel reading, and also the reading of the other readings that we've shared together. The scriptures that I read in preparation for this Sunday's service, that I read each week as I prepare for the services, often they seem to direct my thinking during the week. Probably any of you that have preached, maybe that's common, that as you're preparing for the sermon, the scriptures sort of open your eyes to your own heart, and to the people around you, to the world around you. And perhaps the scriptures that I ponder simply sharpen my awareness. You know, I think that's one of the reasons that it's helpful for us to read scriptures during the week, because the scriptures that we read in devotionals or other places helping to sharpen our awareness and help us to see how the world around us relates to our world, to us and to God. I'm often like a bird watcher, though I don't know a lot about bird watching. I don't know, maybe we have bird watchers in our congregation, but I don't know a lot about it. But I do know that I like birds, and when I'm out walking, I'm looking for the birds, but sometimes I have trouble finding them. You know, I can hear them, but I can't see them, and so sometimes I hear the bird and I know it's there, but when I look out toward the sound, at first all I can see in the copse of our clustered trees are leaves and branches, and maybe the trunk of the tree. You know, I have trouble finding the bird. And then maybe I'll see a flitter, and so then if I have binoculars, then I can turn the lens and sharpen the lens, and then I begin to see the birds themselves. And oftentimes, once I see one bird, then I'm able to spot others too, because my eyes are sort of catch on as to how they are in the trees. Seeing this bird once, seeing this bird once, I become aware of its presence, and it helps me to see others. The binoculars allow me to focus on the bird, to observe it, even to study it, if I so choose. This week has been a week that I have become more aware of a certain aspect or certain kind of scripture, and then it's made me more aware of how similar things are popping up in the world. For example, the passage from Lamentations that Joseph read, you know, I began, as I read those scriptures during the week, I began to see that all around me are lamentations, people who are expressing sorrow and sadness. And now the book of Lamentations a book which I rarely read, really. How many of you have been reading Lamentations? You know? This may be the first time I've ever mentioned it in a sermon. And, but it's a book that's made up of five poems that express the heartbreak of the Hebrew people who have seen their city, including the temple, destroyed by the Babylonians, and they've seen people deported or taken away, or taken into exile from their midst, and then so out of that sorrow, that great sorrow, someone wrote Lamentations. And the book begins, listen to these words. How lonely sits the city that once was full of people. How like a widow she has become. She that that was great among the nations. She that was a princess among the provinces has become a vassal. She weeps bitterly in the night, with tears on her cheeks. Among all her lovers she has no one to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They have become her enemies. Judah has gone into exile with suffering and hard servitude. She lives now among the nations and finds no resting place. Her pursuers have all taken her in the midst of her distress. The roads of Zion mourn, for no one comes to the festivals. All her gates are desolate. Her priests groan, her young girls grieve, and her lot is bitter. Her foes have become the masters. Her enemies prosper, because the Lord has made her suffer for the multitudes of her transgression. Her children have gone away, captives before the foe. From daughter Zion has departed all her majesty. Her princes have become like stags that had no pasture. They fled without strength before the pursuer. So that was the beginning. That's the beginning of the book of Lamentations. And most of us have a reluctance to go into these kind of dark valleys. I was even, when David and I were looking at the scriptures and wondering what we were going to do with the different scriptures, we do that sometimes. Sometimes we just look at them and then we look at each other, you know. And I think I told you that my friend Father Joe, who was the pastor across the sidewalk, when he would read those gospel readings that were hard, you could tell he's not going to preach from that today, because he would roll his eyes, you know, when he read a hard scripture. Most of us would choose happy, sunny places over the sad, dark corners of life, wouldn't we? That's healthy. That's healthy that you would choose happy over sad. But I would not serve you well as your pastor if I didn't tell you that all of us will walk some lonesome valleys in our lifetimes. And and I look around and I know you, I know many of you, and I know that you have already walked some of those valleys. You have already been in dark places. You have already experienced sadness and depression and maybe despair. And if you have not, then I'm glad for that. And my prayer for you would be that you never will, but you will. In some way, you will experience darkness and sadness. This is part of the human experience. It's part of it. This week, I've been binge watching Ken Burns' PBS documentary on country music. You can see how that fits with Lamentations. Much of the music is about relationships. Some of it is about ill-spent time in honky-tonks and relationships that ended in disaster. But also there in the midst of it all is the weeping and the hearts of the hurting. Hank Williams Sr., not Jr., it's called by many the hillbilly Shakespeare. He wrote these words back in 1949. Hear that lonesome whippoorwill? He sounds too blue to fly. The midnight train is whining low. I'm so lonesome I could cry. I think that there have been times when I felt that way. There have been times of grief, there have been times of confusion, there have been times when I have felt, low, and probably if I had heard that song, it would have been my theme song. It would have been playing in the back of my head. What brings on times of despair, times of sadness? There's a lot we could say about that, but I just want to throw a few things out to you. And sometimes these are situational. Our situations create for us times of sadness, times of agony. Some of the circumstances in our lives produce sadness, grief, the loss of relationships, the loss of dreams, the loss of work, the loss of physical and mental capacity, etc. All those things, all those losses. Many of you could add to that list. That you could add to the list of things that you have lost and that have caused you to feel sadness. Sometimes the sadness that we feel is the result of the cruelty of others, and sort of a constant cruelty. Sometimes it's forced isolation. We find ourselves in a place that we did not choose to go, or maybe we did choose to go, but it turned out to be a lonely place. And in that lonely place, that we find ourselves, then we've also experienced this sadness and lostness. Sometimes living in constant fear is another cause of despair and sadness. And so there are many things that enter into that may be affecting us and could affect us in the future. Then, not only did I watch the Ken Burns series all week, and I still have some of those laments, those country laments rolling around in my head. On Wednesday night, invited by some friends from Human Center, I attended the second anniversary of the day when Edith Espinel entered the Columbus Mennonite Church, which had declared itself a sanctuary. How many of you are familiar with her story? Yeah. And I heard Pastor Joel Miller share how their church decided to be a sanctuary for Edith Espinel. Edith was a teenager when she came to our country, and she was brought here by her parents. She married and had a family, and then after 10 years of marriage and after a number of attempts to find a way to citizenship, because she was an undocumented immigrant, the last 2 years, just over 2 years ago, changes in immigration practice, controlled practice by ICE, put her at risk, and she was facing deportation. So she had a choice. She could go back to Mexico, and if she went back to Mexico, then the soonest that she could get back in the country would be 5 years. 5 years. Okay, she's got family here who are here legally, and so she would be away from her children, completely away from her children for 5 years. And so she was able to connect with the Mennonite church which declared itself a sanctuary. And Sunday, on Wednesday night, I heard Pastor Joel Miller share how their church decided to be a sanctuary for Edith. Then I heard Edith's teenage daughter share how much her family misses her mother, and how far she has gone to be, that she has gone out as an advocate for her mother, even to Washington, D.C., where she's visited with representation of senators and the representatives from the House. And then she teared up as I heard. I teared up as I listened to Edith share her story and when I saw a video. How that though she had been here for 20 years and pursued every channel, she still was not able to stay with her family. The policies changed, the emphases changed. So for 2 years now, she's not been able to be with her family on a regular basis. Her family can come and see her. She can talk on the phone. And but she's not there to kiss her children goodnight. And in a way, they're growing up without her. You know, they live about 30 miles away, 30-minute drive away, so that it's not like they're just dropping in every day. As I heard her share the story, I heard her lamentation. I heard her story, and she expressed it very beautifully. And both she and Pastor Joel said, Edith does not want to be here. It's not right that she is here. But it would not be right for her to be returned for 5 years to Mexico. And I heard the helplessness, and I ended, and at the end of the evening, I wondered, where will this end up? And she lives with that mystery too. She lives with the mystery that's ahead of her, wondering, how can this be resolved? And will it ever be resolved? Today, sadness may be one of the many emotions that you brought with you to our time here, to our gathering. In this brief time, I will not oversimplify remedies, because dealing with painful emotions is not simple. It's complex. But I thought I would just run through some things that are helpful for me when I am the one who is writing the lamentation, and it's my life. First, it's important for me to be honest with myself. To have sadness in the heart is not a sign of weakness. It is not a sin. It is a human response to something that is going on. And so if there's sadness in your heart, then be honest with yourself and admit that. Second, lament. Lament. Learn how to put into words your sadness. Share with others your lamentations. I'm amazed at how much healing comes from just knowing that someone else knows my pain. Don't expect someone else to fix the pain or to make it go away. That may take time, but others can walk with you while you wait. Fourth, be honest with God and wait on the Lord. The passage that Joseph read from Lamentations, that was the end of that passage. It said, "Wait upon the Lord. Do not be afraid that open your heart to God, and don't be afraid that you're going to hurt God's feelings if you are a little bit angry with God. You know, God can handle that. God can handle that. The saints of Scripture sometimes shook their fist at God, and God just sort of took it in stride. Fifth, let the people around you love you. 6, realize that the sadness is only part of who you are. It does not have to define you or consume you. It's okay to have fun while you're dealing with sadness. You know, sometimes we feel so low, we just don't have the energy to do that. But it is okay. It is okay to have to do something, to do something else, and it helps to put the sadness in perspective. Listen for the voice for that. Try something try something new if you're in the midst of it. Sometimes we just think, I'm here, I'm stuck here, and there's no way to move on. Try something new. Exercise. Take in the arts. Look for yourself in music and the graphic arts. Look for those pieces of art that express who you are and what you're going through. Then listen for the voice of Jesus. When I read today's gospel about faith being like a grain of mustard seed, something tiny but full of potential, when I read that, I see a glimmer of hope. Because sometimes I think even when the candle has flickered and the land is dark, I still see that I have that grain of mustard seed. And the words of Jesus says that if you have that much faith, then there is hope. And hope's a powerful thing. You could add to the list. Those of you that I look around and I know that you have walked these kinds of walks and these places, and the trail has been dark for you at times. You could share with others. We could share together the different ways, the different things that are helpful to us. One of my favorite folk singers is Kate Campbell. She has a song that says, "How much can one heart hold?" It goes like this: how much can one heart hold? Heard about a man from Birmingham, went down to Selma to take a stand. How much can one heart hold? He sang some songs about peace and love and took a beating from a billy club. How much can one heart hold? How much can one heart hold? A pound of dirt or a pound of gold? We may never know the truth be told. How much one heart can one heart hold? I met a woman who lost a son on a chopper in South Saigon. How much can one heart hold? I couldn't tell you all the tears she's cried. I guess she's gonna till the day she dies. How much can one heart hold? If the heart is a bottomless pit, you gotta watch what you put in it. How much can one heart hold? Before you know it, you're carrying around a ton of stuff that will weigh you down. How much can one heart hold? There are times when I have heard, when I have learned of something that some of you are going through. I have thought, how much can one heart hold? How much can one heart hold? I guess all I'm saying today is, don't be afraid to share your laments. And the implication of this is to be willing also to share the laments of others, to hear them, to walk with them. This is a church that has vast experience in sharing and walking with one another. And I'm glad to be a part of that. And I'm glad that, that through the sharing, that sometimes our hearts are light and we don't continue to hold on and carry some things. And some things we carry forever, and they become a part of us, and they become useful.
Amen.